I want to talk to my empty nest crew, or my Gen X moms, my Gen X dads. If you have a kiddo who graduated around the same time my kid did, my son graduated in 2017. He was class of 2017. So if you've got class of 2016, 2017, 2018, I want to talk to you. Let me tell you why. You guys have some grown kids. Did you know that? And do they know that? That's the question. Do your grown kids know they're grown? Do they know they're the adults? And the reason why I'm bringing that up is because I just met with some young folks, some kids today, which I call them kids because they're around my son's age, around 26 years old. And they called me to talk to me about a lease, about leasing a place. And as we got to talking about like what they were needing, where they were needing to be and stuff, and the budget that they were looking at, I asked them, I'm like, okay, I have to ask. I mean, we'll do whatever. If you want to rent, you can. I said, but have you thought about buying a home? And they had not. And I said, okay, let's have a meeting. So we met this morning to discuss what it looks like to buy a home and why would you want to buy a home at this age? And I think they had a lot of aha moments. And I started the conversation. Listen, guys, I know that you may not be ready to buy a home, and that's cool. And if that is the case, we will find a rental for you. I said, but I do want to plant the seed to remind you and let you know that you're the adults now, that homeownership should be a goal. And if you're ready, when you're ready, I want you to be prepared. So we talked about the home buying process. And by the time we finished the conversation and, we talked about, did they feel like they were ready? And they do feel like they're ready, but right now there are just a couple of things because literally we just started having this conversation. So they haven't had time to financially prepare. So they want some time to financially prepare, and I want them to financially prepare because I want them, when they move into their first home, to feel super comfortable with their mortgage and what home ownership entails. I don't want them to just go into this hurriedly and not be prepared. So they said, we talked about it before coming over here, and we did want to hear what you have to say, but now we know we're going to buy a home next year. And I'm like, cool. So I'm glad that we had this conversation because if we didn't have that conversation, they would probably be renters for quite a while. The news keeps telling everybody that the average homeowner is now 40 years old. And they're telling us that that's what it's going to be and that's how it's got to be. And here I'm trying to tell you that is not how it has to be. People rise to what the expectations that are given to them. If you tell them that they can become a homeowner, they can do it. If they can pay rent, especially substantial rent, they can pay a mortgage. And why not? We didn't talk about just buying their first home. By the time we were done, the husband was talking about down the road. He was talking about retiring and getting into the next home and how easy is it to move from one home to another. And I'm like, nothing's keeping you there. That was a misconception that I had because my parents were in their home for over 30 years. I thought you had to be, in your home. Once you buy a home, you're in your home. You're stuck. Not stuck, but you're set. But I learned quickly in our own home buying process, that's not the case. We, at one point in our careers, my job relocated us to this Dallas-Fort Worth market, and we had just bought a home in the Austin area. We were in that home for 6 months before we had to move. And I'm not talking about just 6 months before we found out we had to move. Within 6 months of closing on that home, we sold that home to move up here. So I'm proof that you are not stuck in a home. If you buy a house, you can sell a house. You're not stuck. You just need to buy smart and strategically. I told them about some experiences that we had with our realtors who helped position us to where we were making very smart decisions. Even though we couldn't see the vision, our realtors saw the vision and we trusted them. And we ended up buying in places that were in high growth areas. And we were rewarded for that. We bought a smart time. Any time that you buy a home is a smart time. If it's a tough seller's market, if it's a tough buyer's market, if you are guided well and you buy well, it's going to be a good investment. So I'm here to tell you, if you have kids that graduated in 2015, 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019, well, those are the adults. They're grown. And so let's start talking to them about grown decisions that they can make now in their 20s that will impact them well into retirement and put them in a great position for retirement. And it's crazy to think about retiring when they really haven't even established themselves in their careers. But now is the perfect time to start thinking about that. At the beginning of your career, you need to be taking care of your retired self. And I wish someone had told me that. And I'm sure people have told me that, but it may not have resonated. So we really got to start making this a very common conversation. Very common. Just like, hey, you got to go to high school and you got to graduate. That was a given. You got to go to college or you got to get some kind of trade. That's a given. It's not something that's thought about or, just a big surprise. Those are a lot of the expectations that we have for our children. Why not home ownership? Why not preparing our children to take care of their elderly selves? It sounds crazy, but it's one of the smartest things that you can do for your children and leaving a legacy. Sometimes leaving a legacy is not the financial assets that you can give to them specifically, but equipping your children to gain those assets for themselves. So if you have children that are in their 20s, I want to talk to them. I love talking to empty nesters and planning this stage in our lives and stuff because it's fun, it's different. We've done all the things, we bought the big home, now we're downsizing, but we want to set our children up too. That's what, I'm trying to do for our family. And I'd love to talk to you and your family about doing that as well. So give me a call. You've got some grown children who don't know they're grown. You don't know they're grown. Let me talk to them and let's talk about the grown things that they can do.